Good morning, everyone. My name is Abby, and I'm going to be presenting the final briefing on behalf of the Don Young Restoration Grants team. I want to take a moment to acknowledge our team's hard work and dedication. We come from a variety of academic backgrounds and share a love for our beaches and coast. We will start with an overview of the bill, moving into the problems, solutions, and case studies, concluding with a wrap-up. A map of the flow of our presentation will be present at the bottom of each slide. Climate change is causing sea level rise and intensifying extreme weather events, impacting ecosystems and communities. Our coastlines and fisheries are vulnerable to these changes. To address the adverse impacts of climate change and to fund adaptive solutions, HR 1196, the Don Young Restoration Grants for Coastlines and Fisheries Act of 2023 was introduced. The sponsors are a bipartisan group of legislators from geographical regions in the United States hit hard by climate change and worsening natural hazards. The bill creates a 10-year government grant program administered by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, also known as NOAA. It provides $1 billion a year to fund projects focused on marine, estuarine, coastal, and Great Lake habitats. The objectives of the bill are to restore aquatic and coastal habitats by protecting fresh and saltwater biodiversity, including fisheries, by removing marine debris and other toxic pollutants, to support climate change adaptation through nature-based solutions and promote ecological barriers to flooding and sea level rise. Priority will be given to projects that include low-income or indigenous communities, stimulate the economy, and employ fishers. The United States has approximately 255 marine and freshwater coastline communities, which over 127 million people call home. We identified 3 main environmental problems within the bill: overfishing, water pollution, and coastal degradation. There are many potential solutions to these problems. The team focused on sustainable fisheries, the mechanical removal of plastics, chemical removal of toxins, and other nature-based solutions for water pollution, and coastal resiliency projects to address coastal degradation. Overfishing problems can lead to fisheries collapse, job loss, and economic hardship for coastal communities. 2 significant overfishing problems are poor fisheries management and harmful fishing techniques. Poor fisheries management includes unsustainable practices such as exceeding catch size and disrupting the breeding of a species. Harmful fishing techniques include detrimental fishing gear or methods such as bottom trawling, which drags nets across the seafloor, destroying marine habitats, and leading to the capture of non-target species known as bycatch. And long line fishing, entailing the use of fishing lines with thousands of baited hooks that catch indiscriminately, also leading to high bycatch. Solutions to overfishing encompass a combination of different policies that come together under the umbrella term of sustainable fisheries management. Sustainable fisheries techniques are unique for each target species. 2 techniques utilized are maximum sustainable yields, which impose restrictions on the total mass of fish caught, potentially allowing for population recovery, and gear restrictions and regulations, which ban harmful gear and regulates use of gear that lowers bycatch. Our case study focuses on the collapse and recovery of the New England sea scallop. Throughout the 20th century, there were significant fluctuations in sea scallop despite the use of maximum sustainable yields, MSYs. MSYs do not factor in ecological considerations like reproduction. So while a cap was set on the number of scallops caught, juveniles were part of massive catches, meaning individuals were removed before they could reproduce and populations could not rebound. This graph shows metric tons of sea scallop meat caught in the North Atlantic Georges Bank from 1900 to 2004. The population fluctuations impacted the stability of scallop fisheries. In 1994, our red arrow, restrictions were enforced to create a sustainable fishery. Dredging was largely banned, crew sizes and trips were limited. Net sizes were increased so that juvenile scallops could escape. Within 7 years, blue arrow, the scallop population recovered and was more productive than when MSYs alone were in place. Water pollution is a huge threat to aquatic ecosystems. Agricultural runoff, plastics, and industrial pollution all contribute to the problem. They cause nutrients and toxic chemical compounds to contaminate aquatic systems, killing species, poisoning drinking water, and destabilizing ecosystems. 3 potential solutions to water pollution are nature-based restoration, chemical removal of waste, and physical removal of plastics. An example of a nature-based solution is wetlands restoration. Wetlands are anaerobic or low oxygen environments where microbes neutralize chemicals and toxins from agricultural runoff and industrial pollution. Chemical removal of toxic water pollutants entails the use of activated carbon treatment, a method used to clean highly polluted Superfund sites. Tanks are filled with granular activated carbon, absorbing toxins as they filter through. The contaminated materials are then disposed of in hazardous waste landfills. Our case study, the Ocean Cleanup Project, is one example of a barrier collection system used to physically remove plastics from aquatic environments. The project began in 2013, and the extraction process can remove up to 100,000 kilograms of trash per day. The debris are then disposed of on land. Here's an example of the Ocean Cleanup's barrier system. Unfortunately, these systems cannot capture microplastics, are limited to only 1% of plastics that float on the surface, and removal from the water only shifts the problem from the ocean to landfills or polluting incinerators. The measurement of plastic remove is not independently verified, and most importantly, it fails to address the root problem, which is the overproduction of single-use plastics. Our last problem set deals with issues surrounding coastal degradation, storm surges, flooding, and coastal erosion. Wave energy is the primary cause of coastal degradation. A wave's power is determined by its amplitude or height and the oscillation or number of waves. Climate change increases the frequency and intensity of weather events, resulting in storm surges with high energy waves. Breaking down this wave energy before it hits shore is key to reducing the severity of storm surges, flooding, and coastal erosion. The impacts of coastal degradation can be minimized by the restoration of three kinds of nature-based solutions: coral reefs, floodplains, and oyster reefs. Coral reefs minimize wave energy, but are vulnerable to climate change. Methods are being developed to grow and reintroduce corals through protected nurseries and to develop corals that are resistant to climate change. Floodplains are areas that receive overflow water during storm surges, excess rainfall, and snowmelt. Restoration solutions can include creation of urban waterfront parks and wetlands. In our case study, oyster reefs reduce wave energy, decreasing shoreline erosion and protecting coastlines. When restored to estuaries, they reintroduce habitats for marine animals, increasing biodiversity. Oyster reefs are being reestablished in suitable habitats within their historic range to restore coastal resilience, as being done in New York Harbor by the nonprofit, the Billion Oyster Project, also known as BOP. Oyster reefs require specific environmental and biological conditions for survival, including specific ranges of temperature, salinity, and water depth. To stabilize sediments, long, narrow, and densely packed oyster reefs are needed to effectively reduce wave energy and to protect shorelines. With these challenges in mind, oyster reefs are still proving to be resilient natural barriers as BOP partnered with New York State to build living breakwaters to reduce storm surges and coastal erosion. Measurements of success include population growth, overall biodiversity and ecosystem health. BOP provides educational programming around coastal resilience, ecological restoration, and community stewardship, addressing issues of environmental justice. HR 1196 will create a grants program to address problems including overfishing, water pollution, and coastal degradation. Today, we discuss specific examples within a broad range of solutions, covering sustainable fisheries, mechanical and nature-based removal of pollutants, and building coastal resiliency. The bill specifically identifies the need to address vulnerable coastal communities, especially communities of color. We look forward to addressing the implementation of this grant program and how it will effectively address inequities in the coming semester. Thank you for your time, and thank you to my incredible team for their support in creating this presentation. Any questions?
Great presentation, Abby. I was just wondering if the bill has any mechanism for dealing with the debris for the physical removal solution when it comes onto land, or does it just kind of focus on the front end of just removing it from the water?
Excellent question. So let me go back. Let's talk a little bit more about the ocean cleanup. So the really cool thing about this bill is that they want projects that already have frameworks in place. They're very much like, all right, Noah, here's $1 billion. Find projects that have frameworks, are on the ground, running, that you can give money to continue doing what they need to do. So an example of that would be the ocean cleanup project, right? So they're already active. They're well-known. The United Nations has highlighted them, especially under the Sustainable Development Goals. So the bill doesn't necessarily say, hey, we want you to find new solutions for taking plastics out of the water and figuring out a more sustainable solution of how to dispose of them. It's just saying, find projects that are already addressing these objectives and priorities and just make sure they're being funded within the parameters of the grant bill. Thank you, Sky. That was an excellent question.
Thank you.